Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, this is Sanjay Devudu welcoming you back to our Friday session for the SME HR month. Thanks to Keka and on behalf of Heritage People Practices in Keka team, very warm welcome to all of you. And as usual, I have my colleague and dear friend Anjali. Good afternoon, Anjali. And our very special celebrated speaker this week, Mr. Srinath. Welcome, Srinath.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Absolute pleasure to have you here. And for the benefit of our participants who have just a flavor of your role as the CHRO of Nexval Group, I just would like to introduce you briefly, because if I start introducing you in full, then this 1 hour will not be sufficient for all the achievements that you have. To all our participants, Srinath is an absolutely thorough HR professional, very well experienced, has worked in different industries across different companies, well-known brand names, and more importantly, I think I can safely say that there are very few HR recognitions which have not come his way, be it from Forbes, be it from the World HRD Congress, be it any other major HR forums where he's been recognized for. The beauty is not just his HR accomplishments and the good work that he has done in HR for the organizations that he has been associated with, but also as a HR technology expert. And he is somebody who holds, he has authored 7 intellectual property papers on HR, and also helped in developing IT automation tools for HR, in improving productivity and efficiency of people. Like I said, I can go on and on and on. So the easiest way to tell you guys more about him is for you to go and look him up on LinkedIn as G Srinath. G for good, G for great, G for go for it, whatever you want to call it, G Srinath. Just go and look him up and you will find a lot more of him. So on that note, once again, a very warm welcome to you. And Srinath, as you know, we've been doing this for a while, as I indicated to you. And this week's theme is primarily around the mid-sized sector of companies, whether in IT or manufacturing or any other sector. And as we are all well aware, every company, every organization has undergone a major upheaval over the last few months, and continues to do so. So in line with that, plans that were made over all these years, or rather at least whatever has been happening and what they plan to do this year as compared to the previous years, has all gone for a toss. So with that, background, so let us just start by asking you, what is it that you are seeing in terms of the change that organizations have experienced? How much of an impact has it had? Whatever we read in the media is all fine, but as an expert who's been closely associated in an organization like Nexval and being part of many, many other Indian forums in Bangalore, if you could just give us your insights on how deeply COVID has impacted the plans and goals of organizations. Let's start with that.
Sure, Sanjay. Thank you so much. Hello, Anjali, and thanks to Keka for having me, participate in the session and learn from you all, of course, and share my experiences that we have gone through. Nexval is a IT company, mid-sized ITES organization, and COVID had a initial 2-3 weeks impact in terms of organizing, restructuring, moving assets from one place to another, so that we are able to sustain the organization in terms of what we are committed to our clients. In a similar environment where clients also were experiencing a similar or more or a higher impact on their ground operations in terms of ability to service their customers, be of value and sustain the day-to-day operability of their services. So we cater to mortgage banking services as an organization in the US geography. Apart from that, we have about 15% size in the domestic media, Bengali media, as another vertical. So therefore, we were preparing to take those contingency plans, and COVID enabled what was performance management on an annual basis or quarter to quarter, suddenly had a 10 to 10 effect. From 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., you were scratching your heads right from morning till evening. What are the things that needs to change? How do we innovate? How do we restructure so that the basics, the elementary aspects of running an organization sustains itself? When I say elementary, the primary aspect is how do you ensure that the revenue cycles don't impact highly, so that your organization is financially healthy, and then you can cater to the other aspects of organization in terms of sustaining livelihoods, which definitely was impacting around, with various aspects of industries like a travel, like a hotel industry shutting down. So primary goal was to ensure that we sustain those activities. So thankfully, we managed to create alternative structures in terms of asset reallocation, asset augmentation, and by 30th of March, we started on 24. By 30th of March, 83% was up and running in terms of revenue generation ability. So financially, impact was not very high. The rest of it had challenges in terms of people staying in PG accommodations who did not have a broadband connection, because all our work of mortgage banking services were carried out on the net, where files come to us with a TAT, and we have to service them and then pile back. And then IT, in terms of supporting IT infrastructure for the mortgage industry. So with this background, we had to, the last mile was difficult. We took about 2.5 weeks from then. So we ended up around April 15 to 20th, when we actually were able to get 98%. So 2% was still impacted. And then, that went on for some time in terms of augmenting assets, rectifying. The biggest challenge was also from keeping your IT infrastructure up and running. What happened was, earlier we were sitting in a single space or multiple spaces with a workforce together. Now we had 700 offices across the addresses where people stayed. So all these offices had to be maintained. Now what was 1 or 2 branches or 3 branches where we could pick up and access them by 3 numbers, now you had 700 different entities who actually are your extended office, right? Nexval became 700 Nexval offices. So how do you cater? What policies are to be driven? What are the things that needs to be done? How do you personalize and first ensure that what is threatened at the core was not just revenue, it was the livelihoods because of a pandemic. So well-being became the number 1 priority. So the first HR metric that or the goal that we set ourselves was talk to our insurance provider, service provider, and see what needs to be restructured, recontracted, so that our well-being aspects of our people are addressed immediately. Then we did a slew of policy changes in terms of uh, arranging our focus in terms of communication, response to a pandemic scenario, and then how do we act post and pre those aspects. So these aspects were rolled out in succession day after day. As I said, it was a 10 to 10 scenario. And then we would regroup in the morning with the teams.
Right.
We would brainstorm, come back by around 2:30 on a daily basis, roll out changes, communicate to the responsible people managers across the company. So it was a communication, I should say, overkill. But it was very much essential because remote offices, as I said, it was not one entity, it was 700 different people. So to reach out to the last mile, last person where impact might be possible was very essential. And thankfully, we had great managers who communicated well, who went back and then came back with a response. We had to do some stitching up in terms of the assets, how they were serviced if they went down. Most of them did not have a broadband to start off. So we had to really innovate there. So we brainstormed with the IT teams to say, if I cannot do it in the traditional manner of file movement, how can I do it on the cloud? So cloud first became a philosophy. So we started with hosting all the aspects of our business supply chain, work supply chain on the cloud. So we talked to Google, we talked to Amazon, we revamped certain processes, and that was up and running. So we were able to successfully migrate on the cloud first philosophy, and that is running still. The next aspect was, if business sustains in this pandemic with the well-being aspect, how does customers react to you in a scenario if they have a different demand than how we are organizing ourselves now? Because a sudden change to the way that they mandate can overhaul the entire thing. Before we could enact this whole thing, because our 80% of our workforce is headquartered out of Calcutta, we had Amphan hitting us. So it was a double whammy. So we had a blackout days of almost 3 to 4 days after the Amphan set in and set out. We had roof collapsing in some of our employees' homes, and all kinds of scenarios played out. But we were able to quickly respond, because we already had a structure in place of quick response from morning to evening, and those teams collaborated really well to be able to go back and support. So these new structures played out. Traditional systems did not work so well in a scenario as this, because it had to spread, it had to give that scale to all that we do today. And that continues to say. And after we navigated successfully that part, we went back to the clients, and from a contracting perspective, we did some major changes in terms of assuring our customers to say, we work with us in this new scenario. We do not know how long it will continue. Probably the first toll gate is when a vaccine is available. Second toll gate is when vaccine is available to all the employees per se, to be able to continue the livelihood without actually feeling on the higher risk radar. So this happened, and then we successfully recontracted all the different customers that we have with March 2021 deadline, to say we will continue to operate 100% work from home in a new scenario, and provide all the services as per the service level agreements. So this contracting happened, and then these are some of the significant changes we were able to make. And pandemic really, there was also another interesting thing that transpired. When I say well-being, our insurance, the average days of illness reduced by 50%, even though in the pandemic scenario. So people were eating healthy, people were exercising at home, they had a lot of time at on hand, and engagement levels went up. So a lot of good aspects also came out of this scenario. Not just the overarching threat is still persistent as COVID.
Right.
Then the underlying threads, one after the other, there are a lot of goods that we can go back and take and see that, yes, this has been a fine transition, so to say, even under a threat. Probably humanity needed it. I don't know.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this is what it is, Sanjay. I think these are some of the things that I wanted to share on the COVID.
Excellent. I think that was wonderful context setting, if I may. So, Anjali.
Yeah, thank you, Srinath. I mean, you've done so much in the past 3 to 4 months. It's amazing. And, when we spoke, you also said that things have kind of settled down. So kudos to you and your team for having done that and handled everything so very well. I think it was easier in the IT scenario. That's what my perception says. But in the audience, I know that we have people both from the IT and the manufacturing world as well. So specifically, like you talked about goals for your team, which is the HR team, but specifically for the organization as a whole, is there an exercise that you went through, given that, something of this magnitude has hit all of us? So what went on from a business planning and hence a goal setting point of view?
Oh, yes. Great question, Anjali. From a goal setting standpoint, we had a traditional annual exercise of rolling out the objectives as well as the areas of results that we want in terms of financial, in terms of people aspects, in terms of practices, and what we are able to productize in terms of at the end of the day with respect to innovation. So on these 4 pillars that we have as an organization, the first was to get the financial aspect ready, because any pandemic, any shutdown traditionally will impact the employee very much in terms of continuing livelihood. So we said, let's ensure that 80% of the revenue is intact at all times during this scenario. So that was the first key metric that we put in place. Second one was to ensure from a financial point of view, our cash flows are intact, because there could be a cash crunch. There could be scenarios where we are paying out more unnecessarily. When I say this, we work on a 24/7 operation, and since the availability clause with work from home was not a challenge anymore, we took out all the allowances. We replaced those allowances with ability to give outcome based work, in terms of somebody having to do X will do X plus delta X, because travel isn't there, the conditions of availability in a particular time isn't there anymore. Those relaxations have been contractually amended so to suit this period of time. So those were some of the key things that we did. From a manufacturing perspective, since we are not a manufacturing unit, I have spoken to some of the industry veterans on manufacturing. What most of them or some of them did try was to innovate their business. Somebody manufactured X, and that X did not make any relevance in the context that COVID was, because consumption was surely not present. So they innovated and rehashed their whole way of manufacturing outcomes to a different product altogether, which suited. Classic example is P&G, Procter and Gamble. They were manufacturing, hand sanitizer. Suddenly it shot up, and then all their units rallied together to just manufacture that and cater to the demand, that is present in the market, and that it turned out to be an opportunity. Similarly, Britannia, they were, in multiple threads of snacks and beverages. They rallied towards biscuits, and that turned out to be fantastic quarter for them. And in our parlance, what we also witnessed was, because of the pandemic, we are a mortgage industry where a loan originates and a loan cycle gets maintained over a period of the tenure, like any home loan that we have. So in this context, we had, in the month of March, we had done a customer survey in that which had shown us that there would be a spike in the home loan market in the US. Because of the pandemic, the immediate impact was job losses going up. The moment job losses went up, we anticipated that strategically there would be more defaults. So we ramped up default services. We published our capacity, and we said we can do this additionally for you. And they were more than happy to say, okay, you can support us because our disruption is still high. You guys go and support. So during this entire period of March till now, we have ramped up about 150 additional FTEs. Even in the COVID scenario. So this is something that we were able to anticipate, cater to, and create the capacity which additionally helped us. And with respect to people, yes, we ensured that nobody is laid off. It is difficult, especially if the entire operation is shut. Luckily, we were not. We did not lay off. We redirected some of the allowances, like a travel allowance. There is no travel, so where does an allowance come into picture? But still, that amount could help somebody in their sustaining their life. Somebody else in their family might have lost jobs. Somebody else, especially given the Calcutta scenario, a lot of manufacturing units exist there, and there are less number of IT units. So we took that step, and we ensured that the allowances are redirected into a different bucket from benefit structure. And these goals were set that, yes, you produce and this is what you can earn, apart from the constant wages that you are on. So we took out the night allowance, we took out the variable components, we took out the travel allowance, and we redirected into an outcome-based, result-oriented benefit structure. I think that was very well received. People were motivated. Now they had their time on their hands. There was flexibility available, and they were sitting at their homes. So they were more than happy to contribute. Engagements, productivity jumped up by about 20% in the same time. So we were able to add more capacity. Though we lost some of the property preservation, kind of businesses where US saw a lull in that because of the scenario, because there were not people going out and doing stuff, but we were able to repool that into different aspects of businesses. So goal is during these times, performance management has become a T20, right? What we used to do quarter to quarter, it is now 20 to 20. So you ought to sit every single day, reconstruct the business and see what is impacting, how is the environment changing. So what was strategic and a far short today is near and here. So I want to look at my environment every day and see what has changed. Because we're catering to a different customer base and a different geography altogether. Elections are playing out. So a lot of factors weigh in terms of how business has to be run. That is so key because ultimately we are responsible for our organization, for our people, and with a human face. If I have to protect them and grow them, we have to take these steps. We have to be more agile. We have to be more informative. At the end of the day, information is what wins, or at least sustains what we are and where we stand.
Awesome. So I think that those are some great points that you mentioned in terms of realigning the business to the required priorities based on the times that we are experiencing, realigning allowances so that well-being becomes a priority and the financial well-being is also taken care of from one bucket to another, but there is no loss per se. If we look at, if I get into a bit of micro detailing, if you look at this life of your junior most employee, right? Probably in a normal pre-COVID scenario, the measurement of his or her performance would have been based on number of files processed or accuracy and TAT within which the files are processed, or there is a productivity goal for each day, etc. With all this, and then of course keeping in mind that it's 8-hour working, commute to office, back, night times, blah blah blah. But given that everything is now changed, it is all work from home. How deeply or how radically has that goal setting changed for that individual? If you take a particular junior most associate role.
Yes, great question. I think the organization, when we looked at the last mile where the delivery happens, the primary goal was the employees came to a particular place, access the tools that they were supposed to produce the end result, and then go back. So they were constrained or limited by the time of in and out, and then hence they had to perform given a duty in that period. Now, if you take out those boundaries with that, which actually happened in the work from home scenario, the employee got a lot of additional time on hand, but also additional challenges in terms of bandwidth in the initial days, in terms of accessing stuff. So we took out those additional layers or layers of limiting layers and facilitated that entire thing smoothly. But from a goal setting perspective, we did not change the goals in terms of diluting goal or adding more to it. What we did was the compensation structure was rerouted to motivate them better. If there was time available and you are able to do, you could be flexible and you could attempt to do those things. So what happened with this, by not limiting or pushing them or even nudging them towards a thing, we just dangled something there and said, if you are motivated enough, if you have additional capacity, because each file has a typical age to it and a typical tag. When that is there, the employees also have a time flexibility on hand. Some of them are more efficient, some of them are less efficient. So when that balance plays out, some of them really had additional time, so they were able to accomplish more. But then that was always there. Just to give you an example, one of the larger clients of us came back and said, we have 6,000 additional files on each day. Can you take it? So we just had to go back and look at our employees, and what also happened during the engagement activities were we were now more engaging more and become more democratic, because you had to reach out to the end mile to be able to affect any decision, a larger decision. So when it is for better, they rallied back and said, yes, we will take it. So this is the confidence. So from a goal setting perspective, we did not retune anything at the end mile to say you'll be doing more files, but then by doing that, not doing that, and taking out the additional challenges that were there by compensating them in a different manner, I think we attained more democratic willingness to be able to add that discrete energy and contribute more. I think that was very vital for us in terms of our growth and the story that we were able to recast.
So it's an innovative way of actually keeping the same goals
Yes.
rather than attacking and realigning goals. So
Yes.
that's a great point. So let me just ask one add-on question before I pass it to Anjali. So you haven't changed the goals, right? So that continues. In fact, you had some additional work also coming in. So I'm presuming that if, as a company overall, Nexval had a target of X revenue, uh, by not changing the goals, by realigning your workforce productivity measures by way of allowances, not the measures itself, are you still on target to meet your the X revenue goal that is there for this year?
Yes, if not for the first 2 weeks, we are able to catch up with the planning that we had done initially, and probably bettered that with the scenario that is prevailing, which is working in our favor. And what we did was, in this additional time that we had, we also set apart and engaged more. HR took up the mantle of the goals itself and allowing managers to talk to their people about the goals. When I say that, just to talk specifically to the OKRs that we are discussing today, objectives had to be married with results. If it is not, then they are silos. Then one is an announcement, another one is pushing hard without a direction, right? So if I
Right.
just say
Right.
an objective and leave it at that, then it is just mere announcement. Another one is, if I just say I need this result and get out from there, then there's no direction. People will only
Absolutely.
do that at the microest level, and they go and do, okay, you need 20, I'll give you 20. So it becomes kind of a trading exercise rather than connected, heartful workplace. So to marry that, we said to all the managers, continue the engagement part, define a model in which you want to add anything that is changed in the current scenario to be able to. One was, we had additional capacity because of the bandwidth that was available in terms of time. People were not even traveling out, and they did not know how much to engage apart from work. So they were constantly worried that the underlying fear of job loss was very much there in the market. So that played out on our employees as well. So they were able to voluntarily come out and express that, yes, please let me know if I can do something else. So that kind of a culture got built over, but we did not overstress anybody. Our tool, I want to bring, we have a workforce tool which employees themselves look for in terms of their total hours of work contributed. So therefore, when there are higher number of hours that they have contributed on the work, it triggers alerts to say that probably you're crossing a particular limit. So with this, they were able to manage themselves. We were not overarching them, but the goals that were set were achieved. And also, because pandemic, what also happened during the pandemic, your attrition typically in the ITS industry went down by 50% as well. So
Right.
a lot of good things. That's why I said a lot of good things start happening, and we were also continuing with the same thing. So I think these are some of the threads that I want to pick up, so that at the end of the day, the goals remained more or less the same. We did not burden anybody, but they had more time. So as we somewhere I read that the true richness or wealthiness is when you have more time in your hand. It's called time affluence. So I think each of us have more time on our hand, and we are affluent with time. And since we were constrained to the four walls of our homes, we were wanting to contribute more. So a culture of allowing people to democratically participate in decision making, those threads we started more. Therefore, a lot of things started shaping up well for us, and that is how it worked.
Very nice. Excellent. Anjali?
Yeah, really. I mean, lots of learnings from whatever you've shared with us so far, Srinath. Thank you so much for that.
Thanks,
Um,
Anjali.
well, and very practical for sure. So now we have a spate of questions flowing in, and maybe I'll take up the first one for you, Srinath, which is from Sakshit and Sanjay, and you know, one of you can possibly answer this. How do you set up the OK model itself and make managers understand this? Because, you know, yes, we typically have this problem where the SME managers are not all that trained and out there. So what's been your experience with something like this?
So before you answer, Srinath, if I may add on another perspective,
Sure.
I think where Sakshit's question is coming from is, I think we've all, at least in our careers, we have been used to
Hello,
I think
Srinath,
we,
you're there, right?
is called.
Go
Are you
ahead.
able to hear me, Srinath? I think we're all there.
sure. No, I think we
Yeah.
lost it for a brief moment. No problem.
Go ahead, Sanjay.
I'm not sure if I am audible and visible. Am I?
You're
Okay.
audible and visible. Yeah.
So we all okay. So we were all used to these goals, KRAs, KPIs kind of a scenario for many years, and over the last few years. So for Sakshit's question on how to set up that OKR model and make managers understand that.
Yeah, sure. So the primary thing is look at your what is the objective that you want to achieve when you have a resource with you working with you. If it is from a sales, you have a hard target of X revenue in a particular time period. Now, in an OKR scenario, it is not a long drawn one. As I said before, it is more of a T20, right? So a larger vision broken down into smaller bits of achievable, attainable, time-bound exercise. So therefore, if you have probably X million for a year, you break it down by a month. But in a sales context, probably I'm just giving you an analogy of sales so that it is easier to understand. When you break it down into a monthly target, the sales cycle per se, each sale from a lead generation to contracting might have a certain period traditionally, say 1.5 months, 2 months, 3 months, right? So depending on your sales cycle, particular and unique to your type of industry, you realign that how far the time can be readjusted to a period which is attainable. Now, in a COVID context, everything has moved on the digital space, right? So you have to factor that element also, and then set it up in a manner saying, make it very simple. Objectives cannot be a paragraph. Objectives are 2 lines which says, I need this and this is what is to be achieved. And results, these are the results that I expect. So from a manufacturing unit, it might be a X number of goods produced by in Y time, right? So it could be that. In an IT context, it could be where I have tested an X product for deficiencies and roll it out in a Y period of time. And this is a very objective target and the measure. Now, when you come and define a result, you have an outcome that you define, but also set a direction. When I say direction of the measure, it is probably how in a quantum or a count. Let me give you an example, which will be better. If I am producing 10 cartons of a produce in a given time, should I be able to produce 15, 20 for the additional time that I have in the current context and in a given period? So this, I am making it very clear, this is the result I want. Now, that carton of 15 will add up to the annual sales of X period throughout the year and fulfills your organization mandate of 10 employees doing 10 cartons or 15 cartons each, and it rolls it up, right? So that is the direction you want to set, whether it is increasing, decreasing. Now, when I say decreasing, it could be losing your people. Losing your people, you have to decrease the count. You can't increase the count because that's a bad sign. So the direction you take has to be guarded or guided by the philosophy that measure that you define has to take. So simple, attainable pieces of objectives with defined set of results that you expect. Now, all the results cannot be reduced to mathematical representation, because there might be different aspects to that, culture and engagement. So everything cannot be mathematically represented, but try and see to make it more mathematical in representation as much as possible, because that will be more clear and there is no ambiguity to that. A number is a number. There is no to and fro about it. It can be achieved or it cannot be achieved. It makes it clear, and the handshake is absolute. But as I said, a lot of things cannot be measured in numbers alone. So those are soft aspects. Soft aspects needs to be dealt with the heart and not with a number. So therefore, we will keep that out for this discussion, because this is about goal setting. So the harder part is, the hard facts is to define certain objectives, very small, not more than 5, and then put it into a direction of what is it that the result needs to be. And then handshake. The most important aspect of any goal setting exercise or an OKR is to have a handshake in full. It cannot be thrust from the top, because then you might not find an alignment. And when there is misalignment, there is disengagement. Disengagement does not produce the results. So the results would only rest on an Excel sheet or a computer in the boss's email box and not actually translate into visible results. So I think that's the added underlying factor there.
Excellent. Excellent.
Very nicely put. In fact, I was reading a book by Andy Grove, the founder and CEO of
Founder,
yeah. And he also put it very simply and almost like you said it. It's objectives and key results, and they have to match the purpose.
Yes,
objective is like the direction. Key results should be measured. And what I liked was when he said that at the end, what you have to do is ask a simple question: did I do that or did I not do that? That's it.
Right.
Yes, no. So make it as simple as possible. I remember reading this and I loved it.
So I think that kind of answer, what you spoke about just now, answers Kaustav's question in terms of how OKR framework itself can be measured. As HR, we don't understand a lot of KPIs as it's above our clearance level. So I'm presuming what Kaustav is asking is, we don't understand all the KPIs like sales targets, for example, or probably financial targets, etc. So Kaustav, the only answer to that is, you don't need to know everything, as long as you are able to understand that there is an objective and the success or failure of that objective is measured by a key result. And as long as those two aspects are clear, how they go about doing that is a functional responsibility. From a HR perspective, as long as that is clear for you, X objective to be achieved, the results that we expect from this objective is Y, and by what time frame. As long as you are clear on that, I think that is more than sufficient. You don't need to understand it. Of course, it's always good and preferable that a HR professional understands the business overall of how it runs and what we make and how much money we make, etc., etc. But does that mean to say you have to be a complete expert on the business? It's not mandatory, but it's preferred.
True.
Right? I hope that answers your question. So this is an interesting question, Srinath, though it is not directly related to OKR, from Vijay Pal Singh about 14 days quarantine for new joinees and transfer cases. It is ultimately increasing the cost, how it should be managed. Any thoughts on that? Interesting question, Vijay.
Oh yes, I think to offbeat that, you could have a employee or a new joiner come with a COVID negative certification. Now tests have been ramped up so well across the country. COVID negative test is a good bit to ward off your off time, so that they can come and join with a certificate. And of course, the basic indicator tests of temperature and maintaining a hygiene in the premises is much needed. If that is not possible, probably the organization itself could facilitate with your insurance provider a test center within the premises off from your physical space, so that you have enough space so that you don't risk your current operations or running facility with somebody coming and infecting that place. So those basic protocols could be maintained to offset the time it takes for the quarantine itself. But if you cannot do 1 and 2, then I think quarantine is the only method. You will have to run that cost, but don't look at it as a cost. It is a human being at the end of the day, whose safety of that individual as well as the employees who are sharing that space with that individual is paramount. Because if employees are not there, there's no brand, there's no organization, there's no profit, there's no loss, right? There's nothing in existence. It's nirvana. So I think attaching a cost to a quarantine is kindly offbeat philosophy. We should look at it as though there is incurrence of cost. I think when you put that investment in a heartful, meaningful policy, people understand, and you will gain much more later point of time because of the care that you show to that employee who's joining you new. I think it is a long-term investment rather than a cost of 14 days.
Completely agree. I think very well said. Very well said. Yeah. So Shilpa, there is a question. There are two questions from Shilpa. At least I didn't understand. So if Anjali or Srinath, if you have understood, can 4 decline execution M model can be adopted for goal setting? I'm not too sure what it means. Did you understand that, Srinath?
Can 4 decline execution M model?
Shilpa, it would be great if you can retype your question so that we understand it better, because it doesn't seem to be clear as of now. 4DX principle, she says. At least I'm not familiar with that, I'll be honest. So anything, are you, Srinath?
Same here.
Sorry, Shilpa, this is something we
4DX.
Yeah, so we also are going to learn about this. So thanks for letting us know. At least none of us have an answer on this. So it is our homework for today. Sorry that we are unable to answer that question specifically. Okay. So there was another question which was not completely OKR related, Srinath, but I think for the benefit of Kirti, who has asked this question, and especially since you have a large population working remotely, maybe a good idea to work. I think some of it you touched upon, but let me just ask you that again. What are some of the measures taken to counsel the employees who are undergoing depression and mental illness during lockdown or work from home? Any specific practices that you have done or experienced would be great.
Yes, this was very paramount in terms of keeping our engagement going and also addressing the mental well-being of employees, because we understood not everybody stays in a palatial home, right? At the employee stage, a lot of them are still cramped up, living in joint family systems, a lot of challenges, new kids, a whole lot of agonizing moments for them to execute their job at home, right? Kids running around, a lot of, as I say, noise to the element of performance. So employee who is not acclimatized to this kind of environment needs to undergo a lot of change and stress before they actually find that balance. And initial stages were tough. So we contracted with a service provider who specializes in counseling to employees under various stages of agony. At least the mental well-being aspect of it. There were 2 vendors who we contracted so that there is continuity and there's not much of challenge in terms of accessing those services, because it should not remain on paper alone, but it should translate to the end person who actually needs it. Therefore, we needed to have a mechanism where the trigger happens and that trigger gets service within a specific period of time. So therefore, we contracted a couple of vendors and we provided that to the employees. Also, we kept up that information constant on the screens of employees at all times. So this is a reminder that yes, this is a help that is available for these aspects for your mental upkeep and ensure that you have continued. So in the last 6 months, we've just had 2 instances where employees went there. Otherwise, they have not. But it is also wrong on our part to assume that those who haven't gone are actually well. So therefore, we ask the vendors to proactively come and do sessions for us, monthly one session. So they are doing that, in the space that is provided, and it has worked really well. The best thing is we have started a HR engagement activity where we have a rule that we reach out to 10 different employees every single day, the entire HR team. And the conversations are nothing related to work. It is just a conversation which is not related to work, and you can talk anything under the sun. It lasts not more than 3 minutes, and it has found a great resonance in terms of people coming out and expressing a lot of things, and it actually ties up and unwinds them from the stress, if at all they are undergoing. And it also is a pulse for us to understand our employees and connect with them and keep the relationship going. So a lot of times we have spent now more time with employees than when in an office setup, so to say.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
we are not part of with our
I think
administration.
we were taking a lot of things for granted when we were physically present in offices, and looking at faces and just probably ignoring, just because you see the face and say everything is fine. But I think this whole remote working, work from home, and not being able to see each other physically, either at a workplace or in the canteen or in the bus or whatever transport that you're using, I think has forged a stronger bond, at least in part of the population, if not entirely. I think that's a very valid point. Anjali?
Yep, sure. Sorry, I think I went on and off. So uh, I wanted to go back to Shilpa's question about 4X model, and I think a little. I'm not sure which industry and which company you come from, Shilpa, so that would have helped. But at this stage and the current pandemic that we are in, I think keeping it as simple as possible is the right way to do things. So that's all I wanted to say. If you can actually get it done in your organization, I think there are enough and more tools by which you can implement the 4X model, and it'll be super awesome. Depends on the maturity of your organization, of course. So that's the only point I wanted to make regarding that. Few more questions, I think, is what we should take up, Sanjay, given the limited time that we have.
Yeah. So Vijay Pal Singh's another question, Srinath. If I may take the liberty of answering, and then you can add on to that.
Sure.
So Vijay, you have asked how can OKR and goal setting model should be implemented for blue collar employees working remotely on construction sites. See, my answer to that is pretty simple actually. If you look at it from a blue collar employee perspective, first of all, they're called blue collar employees for a reason. And it is not to disrespect the individual, but the idea is that their skills are limited and they are given a certain set of specified jobs to do. Okay, and each of those jobs has a very clear-cut scope. So, for example, you have to produce X number of pieces of some material, or you have to move 10 boxes of stuff from one place to another in a day, or you have to inspect 6 products in a day and ensure that the quality is okay. And you are given a checklist of things to do of each inspection. So it's a very, very clear cut. It's not like a managerial job. It is not like a people management job. It's a task. It's a very clear task. And the task has a certain set of parameters. 8-hour shift, 25 products that you need to 25 units of a product that you need to manufacture. Have you done it or not at the end of the day? So your objective is manufacturing those products or assembling those products. Your key result is whether you have done 25 of those or not. That's it. It's very simple. So if you look at each role of a blue collar employee, you just need to look at these 2 aspects. What are they expected to do? How much of it are they expected to do in what given time frame? That's about it. So I think it is fairly simple, but let me throw the question based on my answer. Let me see if Srinath or Anjali have to add on anything to that.
Sure. I think for the work, definition that of a collar worker, we are in an age of no collar now. Okay, so the collars have
Actually,
gone up. Depending on what skills a person does, they do. How we define the results based on an objective is what we have to figure out. In this case, at that skill that is intended in the question, without putting a collar to that, I would say a simple OKR is the check boxes that some of us have seen in our restrooms, where the hygiene is maintained or not. The person comes every hour, checks it, and puts a tick mark there. Right? That's a very, very simplified objective of having a hygienic place there, and the checkbox represent that yes, the result has been attained. Right? So similarly, in a manufacturing setup or in a clinic, patient visiting a clinic, doctor's clinic, makes his entry, check box is done, patient gets diagnosed, discussion is over, comes back, a medicine advice is given, and then there are some entries and goes out. Very, very simplest forms of OKRs. Objective is to get the patient information, retain it for further reference, doctor meeting, yes, no, and then it is over. So these are some of the simple things. And if you go to the front office, since we don't have an office now, so it's a criminal to even mention, but then if you have an office and you have a front office, now in the COVID scenario, typical OKR is to ensure that everybody who comes in are healthy, and if there are anything which is a sign of indication of ill health, then you take these steps 1, 2, 3, informing, accessing your medical healthcare service provider, ensuring an ambulance is provided, ensuring who don't need that, who come in, have a hygienic practice inside, a physical distance is maintained, and so on and so forth. So I think OKRs have to be reimagined in the present context and add a human element so that these are practiced and are easy on the ability to administer them. You can't have an OKR, as I said earlier, going into paragraphs where the person needs a one-day session to understand that first and then put it into practice.
Yes.
Anjali, after you.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think Vijay has already, in a way, understood and answered his own question.
Oh, okay.
So there is a slightly different question around, mental health, mental illness during lockdown and work
Right.
from home. This is from Kirti as well as from Rose, I believe. So any quick thoughts on that, about confidentiality having an effect on
Oh, excellent.
the employees? Yes. And
Very
what are
relevant and excellent
absolutely.
question, Rose. With respect to mental health and confidentiality, what we have done is there is a questionnaire before even the service is accessed, where the employee takes a decision of whether this should go to anybody, including the HR central entity. And if it does, even if it does, the complete information does not come to us. It only says that the service was accessed. We do not get into the details, like even in case of illness for insurance, right? Regular illness, not related to mental illness. The entire details are not shared. Only from a invoicing perspective, whatever is the least minimal information that needs to be attained, only those are gotten, and with the permission of the employee in question. So there is not much of multiple entities coming to handy with that information. That is always kept in strict confidence with the HR department as per the norms and the statutes that we currently have, and also extra care is taken so that these information do not go out unnecessarily, because it can cause, as you said, a lot of stigma and using it for different purposes. So we have put up a lot of stringent guidelines around that. And on the other part of, since you brought out the word confidentiality, a lot of work now, since it is carried from home, a lot of policies had to be changed from an information security standpoint. Guide rails have to be defined in terms of the liabilities that might prop up. Since we were dealing with home loans, a lot of social information of the borrower are present in homes on their screens. So we had to innovate here. We changed our model of information security, where when somebody accesses this information, no other application can be accessed unless it is part of the job. So certain changes to the core way of how we do things did change, and I'm sure that will be different with different industry segments. For us, it was this. So we innovated on that, and also we came up with a new application which empowered the employee to track the time that they spent on different applications, so that they themselves can take a decision to change the behavior at the same. If it is guided, controlled by a central entity, then it becomes, a monitoring tool or a stick in the hand, wrong hands. But
Policing.
actually give that stick to the end employee or the consumer, it becomes a wand for him, where he can create magic by looking at the information, analyzing himself, what he or she can do with that, and changing their behavior over a period of time. I think these are some of the good things that have transformed our landscape of work.
That's nice. But I think that actually answers Giri's question, because he had a question around data security and what do we need to do, and clients not having the confidence. So thank you for that. Going back a little bit to Kirti's question regarding, what measures do we take? So I'm assuming that your organization specifically has set up a helpline
Yes.
for employees to
Yes.
turn to. Okay, yeah, I've
Right.
I've also come across other organizations who've done the same, and may not be absolutely right for HRs who may not be qualified in psychology or some such thing to
Absolutely.
handle these issues. So setting up the helpline with the right NGOs, all qualified people would be the right thing to do. Kirti, I
Right.
hope that helps you.
I think we have time for one more question, Anjali. Rose's question on Srinath, thoughts on aligning OKRs with performance appraisal, she asks.
I think definitely yes, because OKRs are the results computed over a period of time. If you extend it to the appraisal timeline and are able to collate that with a certain kind of weightage to that, definitely it should be considered in the appraisal. At the end of the day, there is a work getting allocated and is being measured on the results, nothing better than any other definition. So I believe very strongly that it should be aligned with a weightage, if not 100%. You should have a weightage to that, and roll it up to the performance appraisal of the employee, because they also have a dedicated information which says that yes, these are the results that I have attained, either by individual or by with a team. So therefore that is a very qualitative data that the company or the organization has to be able to use it for the performance appraisals.
Excellent. Excellent. I think that was a very clear answer on that. Anjali?
Yeah. So I don't see any other. So Kirti has another question, I think. Can we take that?
Yeah, I think we have just enough time for that one question. We can take
Yeah.
that.
Any
New
more?
ideas,
Yeah.
rewards and recognition. I think we went offbeat. We referred to Howard Gardner's passions, right? So we devised or divided our pool of people into different passion teams. Somebody was great in music, somebody was great in hitchhiking, somebody was great in talking like me, somebody was great in something else. So we formed communities around and forced them to come out with a calendar of activities to engage themselves and better that. So it is called an also skill, right? In today's scenario, to have an also skill is very, very
Right.
important. And so what is that I can master along with what I am currently doing? So I think this worked well. We started, in fact, it was not a COVID driven exercise. We started it a couple of years back and it yielded great results. Somebody rediscovered their dancing passion, gave out performances in the external arena. Somebody, sings it as a hobby on the floor when we had a physical office setup. I think now it has all moved into the digital space and they're rediscovering themselves. A lot of cooking tips get shared. A lot of Calcutta is house to a lot of good gastronomical delights. So a lot of recipes get shared. And then we do have an engaged population. I think those are the binders apart from monetary rewards that binds a person to experience. I think these are genuine, authentic reach outs that an HR can facilitate to be able to construct a wonderful place of work where people feel that sense of belonging, even if they are not sitting in a physical workspace. Those binders surely help, and it is much needed now. It is a strategy. It is no more a good to do thing. It is a necessity, right?
Necessity. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That's very true, especially in these times of remote work and all that. Engagement takes high priority as compared to all that. Okay, I think we have run out of time, so or just about time. So, Srinath, absolute pleasure for sharing those, for having you here and for sharing your thoughts. I think they were very, very practical ideas, and your experiences came very useful. And I'm confident that most of our participants would have something to take away. Each one of them would have a different kind of takeaway from this session. So, thank you for sparing time. And I'm sure on behalf of Anjali and I and the Keka team, it was absolutely great having you. Thank you. And thanks to all our participants for, as usual, being an engaging audience.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
And stay safe.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shri. We'll reconnect.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.